Well, happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome into a morning JOX. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you for the next hour. Recapping a little NFL playoff action from last night. Some very interesting rumors in the coaching world. I'll be honest, something that we had kind of talked about tongue in cheek for a while now. Maybe the isn't so tongue in cheek anymore. So we will dive into that. Of course, we have a great slate of SEC basketball coming up tonight. Both Alabama and Auburn going to be in action for you at the same time, actually. So hope you have your your dual screen setup ready, or you are very diligent with the remote, because I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to watch both of those games. But we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about here this morning. Pretty cold outside, not gonna lie. Woke up, looked at the phone, said 25 degrees. Awesome. I understand it's January, but after this last week, man, just one day. And I know yesterday, I mean, it got up into the 50s and it was nice, but I'm like, one day, can we just 37 when we wake up? Something. I'm not asking for 60.
Right.
Just
I'm with you, dog. Like, it's
a little warmer.
They weren't lying when they were telling us that it was going to be the coldest January in record, in the history of Alabama, and I feel it. We just had snow a couple days ago, and now we're dealing with just like I'm not a big cold person. I'm not a big cold weather person anyway. I would much rather have it be sweltering hot outside. I mean, I ain't gonna wear a shirt anyway, but like now it's just like I feel like I never have enough layers, and when I go into certain buildings or certain rooms, the temperature changes, but then when you step outside, yes, it's still going to be brutally cold. So my body can't adjust to anything.
No, I'm right there with you. I definitely prefer it to be, I'd rather it be too hot than too cold. But it is what it is. We move on. And one team that is very familiar with the cold, though, maybe a little more accustomed to it than us, was the Minnesota Vikings, the 14-3 Minnesota Vikings, who had to play in the wild card round because, unfortunately, they also play in a division with the Detroit Lions. And if you forgot, the final game of the regular season was a winner-take-all, essentially, between the Vikings and the Lions. The winner was going to go to the wild card, or the loser was going to the wild card round. The winner was going to win the NFC North, as well as get the first round bye as the number one overall seed in the NFC. So unfortunately for the Minnesota Vikings, they found themselves taking on the Los Angeles Rams yesterday. So the game was it was supposed to be played at SoFi over there in Los Angeles, but it got moved down to Glendale because of the all the wildfires and everything going on over there in Los Angeles. And again, just all our thoughts and prayers with all those affected by it, because look, I know it's far away, but it just feels like every day you see new footage or new information, or you see somebody else who lost everything that they have. And regardless of what your thoughts are on the state of California, because I know people have a lot of thoughts on how things are run over there, but at the end of the day, we're talking about human life and people losing their shelter, their belongings, all of that stuff, and it's very, very all of that is very, very awful. But the Los Angeles Rams certainly made their home team proud last night as they take down the Minnesota Vikings 27-9. And just, I'll be honest, this isn't a huge surprise, because outside of the Commanders doinking their way into the divisional round, we really had a bunch of duds here in the wild card round of the playoffs. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily know that it would be lopsided in this direction. But I kind of figured, okay, well, we haven't had a great track record here. What are the odds we actually get a great game? And we really didn't. You have, let's just call it what it is, Sam Darnold reverting to who Sam Darnold was. And this was a problem going back to that Lions game at the end of the regular season where, he had his worst game of the season so far. He completed, I think, under 50% of his passes. It was just, for a player that had looked like he had taken a step this year and kind of had that, I guess like the Geno Smith moment kind of, oh yeah, after all this time in the league, I finally started to piece it together, and he seemed like he had a good head coach in Kevin O'Connell, who I think is one of the best head coaches in the NFL. And the fact that he won 14 games with Sam Darnold, I think, is a testament to that, because we've seen the true Sam Darnold now the last couple of weeks. But I know, for you, Damian, it's all about Matthew Stafford and all the praise that you have for him, because Matthew Stafford goes out there 19 of 27, 209 passing yards, and a couple of tutties for the Rams last night. I know that always brings a smile to your face to see the former Georgia Bulldog continuing to have success in the later stages of his potentially Hall of Fame career, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see one of the more overrated quarterbacks in the league get his flowers now. No, but I think what the biggest takeaway I get from the game was this LA Rams defense made Sam Darnold see ghosts again, and
Sacked him nine
times. And also, it wasn't on the it's just like the defensive line was just like getting all kind of pressure on him. Nah, it's like Sam Darnold wasn't getting rid of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, I couldn't really tell from the secondary, but it seems like they were locking up their receivers. Justin Jefferson couldn't really get open. But yeah, it looked like if you would have told me this Minnesota Vikings team was going to look as bad as they did the last two games to round out their season, I'm like, man, those 14 wins were just a big waste because of all the talent that you finally had. And it did seem like Sam Darnold was clicking, but he reverted back to old habits. And this is kind of what you get with Sam Darnold. And credit to him. He almost, it kind of, I'm not going to say diminishes, but it does kind of just shed a light of how good was Kirk Cousins the entire time he was in Minnesota. Because Sam Darnold just pretty much did the exact same thing that Kirk Cousins did for his entire career, which is look phenomenal in regular season. And when your team needs you the most, it's, well, where was this? Like, where did all this come from? So I think for Sam Darnold, he lost out on a good piece of change these last 2 weeks of the season. But I'm telling you, as a Tennessee Titans fan, I will take Sam Darnold as is right now because he would make our team better if he was a starting quarterback. And he's a veteran guy. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it feels like he's been in the league for almost a decade, which he kind of has been. But he's only 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not completely washed. But now if you're the Minnesota Vikings, are you ready to put J.J. McCarthy out there next season? Are you going to say, we'll give you even another bridge year with Daniel Jones, who's also on the roster, because you're not going to pay Sam Darnold all the money that I'm not going to say he's worth, but he's definitely created more value than he did once he bounced around in the league coming from San Francisco. Like he's not as bad as he once was. Yes. But you've also probably just seen the peak in this season. If it's probably never going to get better than what you got right now. So how much is he really worth?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think, if you're the Vikings, the route you'd probably take is, franchise tag him for a year and then you get him for another year. And, at that point you roll it back, see if he is able to take another step or if he, like you're saying, Damien, is just kind of, this was as good as it's going to get. And, it also depends on obviously the health of J.J. McCarthy and how his recovery is going and how much that injury has limited his ability to develop. Because I know, a lot of learning is going to come in, in meeting rooms and sitting there and, observing things during the game on the sidelines and different things like that. But, I think you would, before you move on from Darnold, I feel like you maybe would like to have at least gotten to see him on the field a little bit and have that experience to work on, even if it didn't look great. Again, I feel like having the experience on the field is always going to be more beneficial than sitting on the sidelines and watching. Now that's not beneficial, but I mean, getting thrown in the fire, it can hurt some guys, but ultimately that's the way you're going to learn the best. But for last night, I mean, the play of the game, honestly, was probably Matthew Stafford somehow throwing that ball into the dirt on what would have been a scoop and score to make it 10-10. I know you didn't like that.
I didn't. It was a fumble. That was a fumble.
Okay.
That was a fumble. That was a fumble. Like, that's not a throw in motion.
No,
like,
it's not. It's because, see, I was sitting there thinking the same thing of,
if they were running the option, that's a pitch.
Okay. So technically, I understand what they're saying. You see the wrist move a little bit and the ball goes forward. And so I understand that's just one of those plays. I feel like it's similar to the pass interference in the Penn State Notre Dame game, when Drew Aller threw it into the corner of the end zone in quadruple coverage. And not that it's the same play call, but the situation of it was a bad play that should have rewarded the defense, but technically you could call it in a way that kind of bails out the quarterback, right? Like, I guess if we're going strictly by the letter of the law in the rule book, yeah, it was a forward pass, I guess. But I think we all look at that and go, all right, can we just give it to the Vikings? You know, like it's one of those where you're like, they deserve that one. Let's just give it to them. But no, I think that was the play of the game because that would have made it 10-10 there early in the second quarter. Instead of that, you then later have Jared Verse who gets the strip sack, scoop and score. And at that point, I mean, it was essentially all that she wrote. I mean, the Rams were up 24-3 at halftime. You kind of knew the direction that this thing was going to go. And yeah, so the Los Angeles Rams move on. The Minnesota Vikings will be going back to chilly Minnesota. I'm sure a lot of them will be going to Cabo or something like that this week. So good for them. But yeah, if you are the Los Angeles Rams, you survive and advance, and you get to go play the Philadelphia Eagles
on the road.
On the road. Yeah, and that's Philadelphia a 6-point favorite in that one as it stands right now. So that one's going to be coming up for you on Sunday. Just really quick, if you missed it, these are your divisional round matchups. So we have 4 games coming up this weekend for the NFL postseason. The first game you're going to get is going to be on Saturday. You're going to get the Chiefs and the Texans on ESPN. Kansas City, a little over a touchdown favorite in that one. Then you're also going to get the Bills and the Ravens on Sunday. That's the one I'm most excited for. I think that's the one a lot of people are most excited for. But you're going to get Bills and Ravens, Baltimore a 1-point favorite in that one. Then you're going to have the Lions and Commanders as well on Saturday. That game's going to be at 7 o'clock on Fox. And then the Eagles and the Rams will be your midday game on Sunday on NBC. So 4 hopefully very entertaining matchups, hopefully more entertaining than what we got in the wild card round. But I don't think there's any huge surprises there. Maybe the Commanders over the Buccaneers, but you know, I think the Bucs and what Baker Mayfield did this year was pretty impressive. But you know, the Buccaneers, they got the home field advantage because they play in the NFC South, which is possibly the worst division in all of the NFL.
It is.
Well,
no, it is.
Kind of splitting hairs between them and the AFC South. But anyways, but yeah, so 4 hopefully very exciting matchups coming up later this weekend. But even though there was a NFL playoff game last night, that story in the NFL and a lot of people's eyes. So when we are going to, if you haven't heard this story yet, just prepare yourself. No, this is not a serious. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. But a very, very interesting coaching rumor in the NFL involving a current Power 4 head coach in the college ranks. We'll tell you who it is and where they might be headed when we return here on JOX 94.5.
Harbaugh, he might be a prophet, dog.
Just a quick note. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but you're probably happy, just kind of like I am, to have the Ball brothers not really be a factor in the media cycle anymore. But yeah, LiAngelo, so the one that doesn't play professional basketball, he came out with a song a couple of weeks ago, and apparently it blew up, and he just signed a $13 million record deal yesterday. So that was certainly not.
I might swerve in the corner. Whoa, whoa.
Not
couldn't tell you another lyric.
Yeah, not my cup of tea personally. Not my favorite, but
yeah, you're more of a Ty Dolla $ign type dude.
I like Ty Dolla $ign way more than LiAngelo Ball.
No, with you.
Yeah, I think most people do, but hey, if somebody's going to pay you to do something, good for you. But yeah, that certainly was some of the more interesting news that came out yesterday. A quick note there before we wrap up with the Vikings game from last night, as the Rams beat the Vikings in advance to face the Eagles in the divisional round. So JJ McCarthy went on social media late last night and posted a Latin phrase, which I just looked up what it meant. And so it is, I'm sorry, I'm not Latin, so if I pronounce this wrong, I apologize, but it is amor fati, and what it means is the love of one's fate. So kind of an interesting tweet for him to put out there after the game last night. After
JJ Shakespeare.
Ended. Yeah, something like that. So that was a little interesting. And then we have on the text line, Darren texting, he says, the Vikings and Packers are now 0-2 in 2025, while my Bears are undefeated. Go Bears. There's Darren. Whatever helps you sleep at night. But you can chime in on the JOX text line as well, 205-834-9450, because I'll be honest, want to get a lot of people's takes on the news that broke last night. And so if you have been living under a rock for the last, 12, 15 hours, something like that, then you missed the news that not only did the Dallas Cowboys part ways with head coach Mike McCarthy yesterday, in a very interesting situation, because if you remember, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago when the Chicago Bears, speaking of Darren's team, had requested an interview with Mike McCarthy, which Jerry Jones said, no, you're not going to interview my head coach. We're not doing that. So everyone thought, oh, okay, well, that's a sign that you're going to bring him back on a new contract, right? That's what we all thought. No, that is apparently not what happened. And according to reporting by Adam Schefter, not only did they not come to a new agreement, they never even really talked about it. They didn't even reach the negotiation stage of the process. They just decided, whether it was mutually or one-sided, decided it was better to go in their own separate ways. So that's another conversation, but that is incredibly petty, in my opinion, on the behalf of Jerry Jones. And now, because of that, he has put himself behind the 8 ball, because the way that things work in the NFL is, when you have coaches, or in this situation, coordinators on teams that are in the playoffs, specifically here with the Detroit Lions, because both their OC and DC are very hot names in this coaching carousel, you can interview them on a bye week, right? So the Lions, for example, had a first-round bye this past week, so they were open for interviews. Well, they're now playing this upcoming weekend, so if you want to interview them, you have to wait until their season ends. So if that means they go on to win the Super Bowl, you can't interview these guys for another, 3.5 weeks, something like that. So the Dallas Cowboys are already behind the 8 ball. So we're wondering, man, where are they going to go? Where are they going to look? Some different names floating around there. And then the news breaks that Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders have already had conversations about Deion Sanders potentially becoming the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And if you've listened to, I don't know how much y'all have talked about it on Mac and Cube, Damien. I know we've briefly mentioned it here in the mornings. We've talked about it some on 3-Man Front as well. But this is kind of something we talked about tongue-in-cheek, right? Oh, can you imagine Deion Sanders goes to the NFL and, the team drafts Shedeur, and then that's just kind of how they continue. And we kind of have, made that joke ever since he got to Colorado, right? Of, okay, well, this is great, but what happens when Shedeur and Travis Hunter leave? Are you still going to be committed to Colorado, or are you going to want to move on to the next thing? We also found out over the weekend that reportedly Deion Sanders expressed some interest in the Raiders coaching job, which the Raiders said, no, we're good. But according to, Adam Schefter, Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders have already had a conversation. That doesn't mean that he's going to be the next head coach, but I certainly think that it means we're closer to that being reality than I ever really thought we would be, at least this offseason. So I want to get your thoughts, Damian, on kind of the big news last night of how do you think Deion would that transition from Colorado to the NFL? Do you think that he would maybe be a better fit in the NFL? Yeah, just kind of where are your thoughts with this? Because I'll be honest, my first impression of this is that it would be a disaster. And it would win the headlines. You would get a lot of attention. But if you didn't win and win very quickly, this is going to be a huge mess.
That's the thing about the Dallas Cowboys. They placate on their history for so long of being America's team, and they want to be in the national headlines all the time. But for the past really 20 plus years, it's how can you have some of the best rosters in the NFL year in and year out and still not be able to win a big one? Not even play for an NFC Championship game, not even make it to a Super Bowl. So I think for Jerry Jones, at some point, everything around you is changing. I'm not saying that, some of these coaches hadn't necessarily been problems. Sometimes the talent hadn't been a problem, but there's just been one constant revolving door of coaches, personnel, players, and things. But the owner is still the same. Like Jerry Jones is the reason why the Dallas Cowboys are in these situations game in and year out, because he wants to be the front and center of everything. Okay, if Deion Sanders comes back and they don't make it to a playoffs, but yet we're still talking about him, it's the exact same thing you had with Wade Phillips, Bill Parcells when he was there, Mike McCarthy now. It's, okay, what do you want? Do you want the publicity? Then you'll have it. You'll for sure have it with Prime. But we also have never seen Prime coach without Shedeur Shiloh being on the field at some point in time. So I understand that to me, I would much rather him stay at Colorado. Like I would much rather him stay at Colorado, build that thing up, and if a bigger job were to parlay, because I don't look at the Dallas Cowboys head coaching position as something that's like, oh, that's what every coach wants to be at now, because you still got to answer to Big Jerry up top. And I don't think Coach Prime I think he's got enough cachet and got enough in his bag now where he's going to be able to look Jerry Jones in the face like, hey, listen, you hired me for this job for a reason. Let me get this thing rolling. I got you. Just you stay in your lane. I'll stay in mine. Do what we need to do. We'll shake hands, kiss the babies when we need to, and we'll go from there. But when it comes down to what your product on the football field is, it's been a lot to be desired from the Dallas Cowboys. And, Dak Prescott's been injured a couple seasons, so that kind of throws a wrench into all your plans and a lot of things. You end up, letting Zeke walk out, you let him come back, and you still is like, okay, yeah, now we see why we let you go to begin with. You have CeeDee Lamb, you got Micah Parsons. You have pieces on this squad now where Dallas should be positioned to win football games and win at a high level. But, again, Prime has never coached in the NFL. He's never coached in the NFL. So if you just want the clickbait, you want the flashy headlines, so be it. But you need a head coach that you can truly say, hey, I'm going to let you be the guy. You make these decisions, do what you need to do, and kind of push Jerry to the side of, because, like, hey, this is a young man's game. And I understand that you're a business mind. You're a business mind. The dollars, and what draws people to the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, keep that. Keep the marketing side of everything. But when it comes down to the football stuff, you need a head coach that's going to be able to just do what he needs to do, and that's put the best team on the field and win football games at a high level.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. My thing with that would just be, I don't think anybody can tell Jerry Jones that, right? Or to the degree that it would make him change how he runs the team or runs the organization. Mm-hmm. And even with a guy like Deion, who, we know his history with the Cowboys, and him and Jerry have known each other for a long time, and they seem to have that mutual kind of respect for each other. But I still think, it's Jerry Jones, right? It's my way or the highway. I'm the guy with the money, if I just feel like in this situation, it'd be like, all right, Deion, I'm giving you a lifeline, right? Like, I'm taking a chance on you because I know what you did at Jackson State, and that was great. Okay, you won 9 games at Colorado this year. Okay, cool. But I still feel like from just going from having one good season at Colorado in the Power 4 ranks with the Heisman Trophy winner and a top 5 quarterback in college football, that's a lot different. And you're playing in the Big 12. That's a lot different than going and playing in the NFL and playing in an NFC East where, okay, maybe the Giants aren't in a great spot. But the Commanders look like they're going to be good for a while now with Jaden Daniels. The Eagles have continued to play at a really, really high level and be one of the best teams in the NFC. And you're going to an organization where, the Cowboys, this isn't the Jaguars or the Raiders or even a team like the Patriots right now, where I'm not saying that those teams, some of them don't have good traditions of winning. Um, but the expectations in Dallas are going to be, you're going to come in here, you're going to get us to the postseason, we're going to start winning playoff games quickly, because that's where you're at if you're Dallas, right? You're trying to win a Super Bowl and get to an NFC title game, which you have not been able to do in over 20 years. And that is a lot of pressure for a new coach to walk into, on top of, you're paying a quarterback $60 million, who I don't think Dak is bad. I think he's quite good at times. But is this a guy that can get you to where you want to be? And we really haven't seen that yet. And he's had better supporting cast around him than what you have in Dallas right now. So it's an interesting situation. The other wrinkle that goes along with it, obviously, is part of it for Deion. Hey, if I go told that we are going to, because if you're Dallas, you don't have one of the top picks. Are there, is there a path for us to trade up and draft Shedeur Sanders? Now, maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe he wants his son to go and have his own path in the NFL, and he's perfectly fine going and taking a job like the Dallas job and not having Shedeur be on that roster. I don't know how he feels about that. I think that's a very important part of all of this. But again, I think a lot of it just comes down to, from a publicity standpoint, this is about as good as it gets, right? Prime time as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. It would be entertaining. It would give us a lot of stuff to talk about, and I understand it from that standpoint if you're Jerry Jones. But